It is 9:47 p.m. The candle has been burning for about 40 minutes, the vanilla one, the one that makes the whole living room feel like a bakery in November. You're on the couch, finally decompressed, and your cat was right there beside you 20 minutes ago. Now she's gone. You check the bedroom. She's on the far side of the bed, facing the wall, completely still. That's the moment this video is about. Not a dramatic fight, not a visible wound. She didn't sneeze dramatically, she didn't knock the candle over, she didn't give you a single readable signal. She just withdrew, quietly, completely. This is the pattern that runs underneath almost every misread moment between a cat and the person who loves her most. The mistake doesn't look like neglect, it looks like a normal Tuesday evening. It feels like a relaxing night in. What makes this harder is that the withdrawal isn't always about scent. Candles are just the most immediate example because the cause and the disappearance happen in the same hour. But cat behavior researchers have observed that the same quiet exit pattern shows up across a whole range of everyday interactions, things that feel affectionate, things that feel routine, things no reasonable person would ever flag as a problem. A prolonged stare that reads like devotion, a belly that gets offered and then punished when touched, a new piece of furniture that shifts a territorial boundary no one knew existed. Here is what your cat's nervous system is actually doing in that moment, and it has nothing to do with affection. A cat's body is built around one core function: threat assessment. Not love, not bonding, survival. Every sensory channel your cat possesses, the tapetum lucidum behind their retinas that amplifies low light, the vomeronasal organ along the roof of their mouth that chemically reads the air, the whiskers that measure spatial clearance to within a fraction of an inch. All of it exists for one purpose: to answer a single question, constantly, in real time. Is this environment safe right now? When you roll that vanilla candle into the room, your cat isn't experiencing ambience. Their olfactory system is processing an information density that is roughly 40 times more intense than yours. That scent you find barely noticeable is, at the receptor level, closer to a fire alarm than background noise. The sympathetic nervous system responds accordingly. Pupils widen, respiration shifts. The HPA axis begins a quiet escalation. No hissing, no running, just a body that has already classified the environment as hostile and is now managing the load. The belly exposure is even more precise. When a cat rolls and shows you their abdomen, their proprioceptive system has made an active calculation. Every vital organ sits unprotected in that position. In any context outside total safety, a threat could arrive from any angle, and the cat would have zero response time. Behaviorists have observed that this posture is not initiated casually. It represents a specific neurological state: parasympathetic dominance, threat level assessed as near zero, no active predator signature in the immediate environment. The body is broadcasting its own internal threat reading, not an invitation, a status report. And then your hand moves toward the belly. What your cat's nervous system registers is not your intention. It registers a large object descending rapidly toward the most vulnerable point on their body. The sympathetic system doesn't pause to consider that you meant well. It fires. The hind limbs kick. The forepaws grab. The bite is reflexive, sharp, fast, and over before either of you have time to process what happened. Behaviorists refer to this as redirected defensive response, and the speed of it is the point. A cat who hesitates in the wild when a threat reaches their belly doesn't survive. The nervous system was never designed to hesitate. The territorial conflict in a multi-cat home runs through the same architecture. Resource competition isn't a personality conflict, it's a chronic sympathetic activation that never fully resolves. One cat controls a resource cluster, the other's cortisol load quietly rises. No fight breaks out. What happens instead is subtler. One cat stops eating at the usual time, starts avoiding a corner of the apartment, begins spending more hours under the bed. Cat behavior research suggests this kind of sustained low-level stress, what some researchers describe as allostatic load, can persist for months without a single visible confrontation. The body is always keeping score, even when the room looks perfectly calm. None of this is emotional. That's precisely what makes it so easy to miss. Here is what is actually happening inside your cat's skull the moment you lock eyes with them, and it has very little to do with love. The feline visual system is built on threat detection, not emotional exchange. Their tapetum lucidum, that reflective layer behind the retina that makes their eyes glow in low light, is optimized for motion and contrast across vast distances. What it is not optimized for is processing a prolonged, motionless, close-range stare from a large mammal sitting directly in front of them. When you hold that gaze, you are not speaking the language of affection. You are triggering something far older and far less warm. Among cats, an unbroken direct stare is not a greeting. It is a pre-confrontation signal. It is what happens in the seconds before two cats decide whether to fight or flee. The moment that stare registers, the sympathetic nervous system begins to mobilize. Cortisol starts moving through the bloodstream. The HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal pathway that governs the stress response, begins to prime the body for a decision. None of this is dramatic. There is no hissing, no flattened ears, no visible panic. There is just a cat sitting very still, pupils quietly adjusting, body coiled in a way that looks like calm but is actually the opposite. Cat behavior research suggests this is one of the most consistently misread interactions between humans and their cats. The owner interprets stillness as engagement. The cat is calculating distance to the nearest exit. What researchers at the University of Sussex documented in 2020 cuts directly against every instinct you have about eye contact. Cats were significantly more likely to approach and remain near a person who offered slow blinks, that half-lidded, unhurried closing and opening of the eyes, compared to someone holding a neutral, open-eyed expression. The slow blink is not a quirk. Behaviorists now describe it as a form of positive emotional communication, a signal that reads, in cat neurology, as the deliberate down-regulation of threat scanning. You are telling the cat's nervous system, I have lowered my vigilance around you. That is not nothing. Here is the part nobody says out loud, and it's the part that actually matters. You've been carrying something this whole time. Maybe you didn't realize it had a name, but you felt it, that low hum of guilt that shows up when your cat flinches at your touch, or disappears under the bed after you've rearranged the living room, or stares at you from across the room in a way that makes you wonder what you did wrong. You've been running through the list. Was it the candle, the way you picked them up, the weekend you rearranged everything and didn't think twice about it? Put that down. Not because none of it mattered, it did, and now you understand why, but because the reason any of this happened was never negligence. It was a mismatch, a fundamental, biological mismatch between two nervous systems that evolved on completely different timelines for completely different survival pressures and never got a shared instruction manual. Think about what your cat is actually working with. A vomeronasal organ that reads the chemical residue of stress in the air before you've even noticed you're anxious. A sympathetic nervous system that can spike into high alert from a shift in furniture placement, not because something hurt them but because the scent map they built for safety has been quietly erased. A stress response that doesn't announce itself with noise or dramatics but instead roots inward. Reduced appetite, changed elimination patterns, more time spent in corners you never look at. That's not a cat being difficult. That's a finely calibrated threat detection system doing exactly what it was built to do. And you were never given the decoder. There's a viewer who wrote in about the months after his wife passed away, he'd hold his elderly cat every night and look into his eyes, searching for some sign that the grief was shared, that the cat felt it too, and every time the cat would look away, squirm, and eventually leave the room. He thought it was rejection. He thought he was being left alone in his loss by the one creature still in the house. What he didn't know was that a sustained, direct stare to a cat registers as pressure, as confrontation. The cat wasn't pulling away from the grief. The cat was responding to the only signal it could read in that moment. A face locked forward, eyes wide and unblinking, body tense with emotion. In the cat's perceptual system, that pattern means one thing. It means hold still or move. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was loving as hard as he could. He just didn't have the translation. That's the thing about interspecies relationships that no one explains clearly enough. You're not communicating with another person who shares your emotional vocabulary, your facial expressions, your sense of time, your relationship to eye contact and physical space. You're communicating across an evolutionary divide that spans tens of millions of years. The fact that it works at all, that cats seek proximity, offer slow blinks, follow you from room to room, sleep pressed against your legs, is genuinely remarkable. It means something is getting through. But the gaps, the misreads, the moments where you reached for connection and got withdrawal instead, those were never failures of love, they were failures of translation. and translation is something you can learn. You don't need a training plan. You don't need to rearrange your schedule or learn a new system. What you need is already sitting somewhere in the same room as you right now. Here's the only thing worth trying tonight. The next time your cat meows at you, not a demand meow, not a feeding time meow, just that small, almost throwaway sound they make when they follow you from the kitchen to the hallway. Don't scroll past it. Don't talk over it. Just pause, look at them, and make a sound back. Any sound. A soft exhale, a quiet hey. Even just turning your head and holding eye contact for 2 seconds before you look away slowly. That's it. That's the entire ask. What you're doing in that moment isn't training. It's not a reward system. It's something much older than that. You're completing a signal loop that your cat opened. Behaviorists have observed that cats who receive consistent vocal acknowledgement from their owners show fewer withdrawal behaviors over time, fewer retreats under the bed, fewer silences that stretch into days. Not because the owner said the right thing, but because the cat's nervous system registered, the signal went out, and something came back. Adult cats don't meow at other cats. They developed that sound specifically to reach you, which means every small chirp in the hallway is an experiment in trust. They're checking whether this particular human still responds. The slow blink works the same way. If you catch your cat watching you from across the room, don't stare back directly. That reads as pressure. Instead, let your eyes go soft, blink slowly, and look away. You're not performing affection. You're speaking in a dialect their parasympathetic nervous system actually recognizes. Calm signal. This does not mean you failed your cat. It usually means you are reading a feline safety system with human assumptions. Then come tell me in the comments, does your cat respond? Do they blink back, look away, take one step closer? I want to know what you notice, because the moment you start paying attention to their replies, you'll realize they've been answering you all along.